And hello, everybody. Welcome again. Picking up Chapter 3 with spyware. Spyware is software that gets installed covertly, and then it's going to gather information without our knowledge, right? A lot of times we'll get it when we're downloading other free software, as I've mentioned before. Spyware consumes memory resources, which is one of its problems, besides spying on us, right? And it's because it's normally running all the time, right? So the network bandwidth is being utilized, and it actually provides a legal issue if you can determine who they are. So it's going to send information from the infected computer to the attacker, maybe your confidential financial data, passwords, or PINs, or any other stored data. It can register keystrokes like a keylogger we'll talk about later. Again, educating users is a key solution, right? Now, I will also add that DLL injections, so DLL are libraries within your computer, right, that help you do commands. So DLL injection is a spyware technique that inserts a dynamic linked library, or the DLL, into your running process's memory, right? So Windows, which most of us have, was designed to use DLL injection to make programming easier for developers. Yay! Some of the standard defenses now are needed, though, against DLL injection, right? And application coding and operating system patches, firewalls, intrusion detection systems can all be used jointly to stop DLL injection when it's not licit. Okay. Then there's also adware as a risk or a threat. So there's money to be made in providing email addresses to spammers, right? Spam is that unsolicited junk email that we get. Anybody that has Google, I use Google. I like Google. It's got a spam filter. It puts a lot of stuff into the junk box, it calls it. But the spam filter, as you know by that experience, is far from perfect. And you have to teach the computer what isn't spam. It's useful to go look in your spam folder daily, I have found, to make sure that you're not missing stuff that you actually want. So the filters aren't perfect. So again, spyware is gathering that personal information. Adware is displaying ads based on our personal information. One defense you can use for the adware is a pop-up blocker. These mitigate adware, right? And so, and a couple of links you might go to for adware or spyware is in Google. You might type in spyware. You get a lot of good information. And there's also www.spywareguide.com. Another good place to if you're interested in that, right? The adware's main purpose is to determine the user's purchasing habits so that the web browser can display ads tailored to me, the user. It does slow down the computer you're running on, so that's a negative trait, okay, for your risk register. Now, protecting against malware attacks. So being aware of malware presence is important, right? Just as you're aware of unscrupulous telemarketers who call you during the dinner time, right? Being aware of malware can better equip you to make valid decisions. So computer users should just be skeptical when prompted to click on a link, right? As we've said, new viruses, worms, Trojans appear daily, right? And fortunately for us, antivirus programs can detect many of them. As soon as a signature is discovered, there is a network of antivirus programs with Symantec and Palo Alto and McAfee, etc. And they often share for the good of the industry, to make sure that as fast as possible you are getting updated signatures. That's why it's important in your risk register to note for something like that patching should be happen or updating signatures for antivirus programs should happen regularly. Okay, it's impossible to prevent infection, that's true, but it is possible to minimize the damage and the frequency through education, through antivirus programs, etc. Okay. Now, protecting against malware attacks, a little bit more on that. So, as I said, a lot of these attacks are dynamic and they're multi-layered, right? So it can start out by actively phishing our employees in a company. And we may want to combat that by sending them to training, right? Or if they click on a phishing link, right, we may do a test phishing email. And if they click on it, make sure that they get additional training. Because we want to prevent malicious code from being introduced into the corporate network. That's what gets lost. We're not just clicking on a link. We're introducing malicious code into our network. And once it's on the network, it is hard to stop, right? It can, we've seen with worms, it can propagate itself and spread. And so we might want to whitelist is another thing we could add to our risk register. We only allow links to be clicked from sites on a whitelist, right? That's kind of a last line of defense, but it's still possible. A whitelist allows only those approved programs to run on our computer. We do want to update our virus signatures, yes, so add that to your risk register, please. Most antivirus software will do this automatically, but you want to make sure it is, right? To counter spyware that's in the adware, again, the antivirus product will help us there too, I believe. We want to protect the network by installing a firewall, right? Which has a general rule, a default rule of deny all, right? And then it's what we allow either through the ports that we open up or through a whitelist, for example. We can also use a blacklist to block known malware sites. So you might use a whitelist and a blacklist on your firewall, right? Which is placed before and after your demilitarized zone, for example. So many of the top antivirus vendors, they offer software firewalls for home and small business if you're interested. Or you can add an intrusion detection system. An intrusion detection system in our company normally has sensors out on our network. And those sensors are collecting information as packets travel. And those sensors send that information to a collector, and the collector then forwards it to an analyzer. Sometimes they're together, right? And that is going to give us warnings in this IDS, this intrusion detection system, right? But in the end, clicking on an icon in an email message can activate a virus or Trojan or allow others access to our computer from a remote location, right? And so we want to make sure that we are mitigating these efforts by the attacker, right? If there's uncertainty, we want to be cautious of websites, materials, attachments, links, etc. Okay. As I've mentioned, education. In cybersecurity, they will say, and this is a great thing to write down on your risk register, that the best dollar spent in cybersecurity is education for your team, right? You can do structured training, you can do focused training based on the level of the user, if they're an admin role or a basic role or a manager role, right? We can do monthly email updates, for example. We can recommend virus signature database updating, etc. Whitelisting, I've mentioned already, allows only approved programs to run on a computer. Whitelisting on a firewall allows only approved websites, for example, on a web gateway. Allows only approved websites through, right? That sort of thing, right? And again, I've mentioned update your virus signatures all the time, okay? Two popular spyware and adware removal programs, SpyBot and Malwarebytes anti-malware. I am familiar with Malwarebytes. I've used it. It's fabulous, and it's low cost. A lot of times if you go there, you can get a free Malwarebytes subscription. Now, be careful. Malwarebytes is going to scan your computer and probably make a copy. But if you trust them, and I frankly think they're a pretty good company, but you must decide for yourself. Part of this multi-layered attack approach includes phishing, right? And that will involve scare tactics, right? We want to, hackers and attackers are going to make us afraid. That's part of their strategy. One is they might try and build trust with us to get us to click on a link. The other is they might create a sense of urgency. Do it now. I can save the network if you just click this link now. Or they might create a sense of fear in us, that sort of thing. Well, we want to avoid doing that when we're promoting security within organizations, right? We want to avoid scaring users into complying with security measures, right? Sometimes security testers will do this, but it's generally considered unethical. We want to be positive in our security approach as a security tester. Okay, and then we get into intruder attacks on the network now, on computers, right? So an attack, as we know, is any attempt by an unauthorized person to access, damage, or use network resources. Usually this happens when a weakness or vulnerability is exploited, right? So an attack is that unauthorized access, remember? Unauthorized person that wants access or damage or use of our network resources, right? Now, so look at we have threats out there, and that's why our incident response folks and operations folks are often looking for indicators of compromise, or we call them IOCs. Those are the threats out there, all right? And our programs, our applications, our operating systems have vulnerabilities. If we don't know what the vulnerability is, maybe neither does the bad guy, right? So even though they're the threats out there, they are not aware of the vulnerability to take advantage of it yet. And this is why we're doing patching all the time, because patching is filling bugs that close vulnerabilities. Now, a risk happens when there's a vulnerability, the hacker finds out about it, and they exploit it by combining that vulnerability, that hole in our code, our application or OS code, with the threat they've developed. And that's exploiting it, which creates a risk, which is what we're trying to catalog in our risk register. Now, network security, of course, is, so an exploit is a specially crafted string of data that wants to take advantage of the vulnerability, right? So it's using it's exploiting the vulnerability with the threat, and that creates our risk. Network security is concerned with network infrastructure. Computer security is defined as securing a standalone computer, right? That's not part of the network. And both are really the fastest growing types of crime worldwide, right? Okay. This slide here shows where you can go in the U.S. government now to notify them of computer attacks. IC3.gov, worth visiting as part of our toolkit. Okay. Next, we're going to come back and start with denial of service.